Well, folks, it's official. Aprilia is entering the beginner bike marketplace with their RS457. Not exactly the best name. They probably ought to workshop that one a little bit. But despite a pretty bad name, this bike looks pretty sweet. And there's a whole lot of implications, especially for a company you might not think about unless you're familiar with my body of work, in which case you're like, okay, how is he possibly going to tie this back to Harley Davidson? Let's hit the road and let's talk about this brand new Aprilia. So, some news out of Nowale. It's time to talk about Aprilia's entry into the beginner bike marketplace. And this is something that Spy Shots came out a couple of months ago. Everybody thought it was a 440, and you know, I honestly think that Aprilia ought to take a page out of KTM's book here and understate their displacement, because 457, horrible bike name. I still think the 954 from Honda is a really bad bike name as well. 3 numbers back to back that are different, that don't roll off the tongue. It's not great. But again, bike names aside, there's a lot of interesting implications for this motorcycle, and we're going to get into all of that a little bit later. But let's talk about the news. So a little while back, like a week ago, Dennis Chung came in hot with a tip that basically this bike was going to be revealed on the 7th. It is the 7th as I'm filming this. Sure enough, he was right. He also claimed 457, and he was right. But let's talk about the bike itself. So Aprilia's pretty light on the ground in terms of their exact specifications. You can definitely expect to learn more about this bike at EICMA. We are getting into that EICMA season where people are getting ready to show off their 2024 lineup. You can expect to see little drips and drabs of news coming out of the industry about what's going to be shown in November. So basically, this is Aprilia just being like, yeah, no, we got a new bike to show you. Stay tuned for our EICMA, and we're going to give you all the details. But here's some teasers. So, engine displacement, I believe it would be 457. I do know it is a parallel twin. The press release did not state whether it was 270 degree, whether it was a cross plane or not. I'm going to assume that it is, because that sound is basically endemic. Well, not endemic. It's emblematic of the parallel twins from Aprilia. It would be really weird for them to put out a parallel twin that doesn't at least imitate a V-twin sound. They claim 47 horsepower, basically exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting this to be an A2 motorcycle, which means that it's going to have the exact maximum to the decimal point that the EU allows for horsepower and torque. We do have a dry weight figure, of 350-ish pounds. Dry weight 350 probably means that we're looking at roughly 400-ish, maybe 390, 385, something like that, with all the fluids in there. It kind of depends. And we don't have any pricing information on it yet. Some other stuff we do know about the motorcycle, though. It definitely is packing bi-Brie brakes, which makes sense. The bike is nice and light. They don't need to throw big Brembos on it. And that's going to be a cost savings measure, because sure enough, this bike is going to be built to a budget. You can look at the pictures and you can see that the master cylinder isn't the same that you see on bikes like the 210-660 and the RS660. There's a bunch of technology in this bike too. They have the dual channel ABS, which means that it's going to be toggleable and controllable. My guess is that what they'll have is maybe a level or 2 for each wheel, and then completely disableable in the rear. That's what I read in the press briefing. I may be reading into the different levels too much, but certainly it's toggleable at the rear wheel. You're also going to have rider modes. I think that's a little bit silly on this motorcycle. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it needs a bunch of rider modes. I feel like that's extra cost. But you know what? They are giving you a nice TFT display. Maybe you'll even get cruise control, which would be super awesome for one of these little budget bikes to come with cruise control. I would really like to see that as standard instead of TFT displays. I would honestly give up the TFT dash and go solely for a nice cruise control setup. So, speculation time on this motorcycle. We don't have price. I'm going to go ahead and assume probably between $6,500 to $7,000. I'm going to go ahead and put a number on it. I believe it's going to be $6,599. That seems like a good price for this motorcycle. It's definitely more technically sophisticated than the KTM, which comes in at $5,800 US. It's got a lot more features and an extra cylinder. It makes sense that this motorcycle would be a little bit pricier. One thing is it does have an optional quick shifter. That's not actually something that comes on the bike stock, which is an interesting choice. Definitely a cost savings measure there too. I don't really think you need it, but you know, it's nice to have. It's a cool feature, especially if you are going to try to take it to the track. And then last thing I do want to speculate on is whether or not we're going to see a Tuono 457. See, already the numbers are getting to my brain. My guess, no, we won't see a Tuono 457. Why? Because the Tuono 660 is not selling nearly as well as its bigger brother, the Tuono Factory. There just isn't enough differentiation between the SKUs to make it matter. The RS660 is already such a chill place to sit that it doesn't make sense to throw in a even more relaxed bike and just chop the fairings. Because let's be honest, what's the one thing I say about the Tuono all the time? It's a V4 with a handlebar. RS V4 with a handlebar. Same thing with the RS660, Tuono 660. Tuono 660 is an RS660 with a handlebar. Could be wrong about that. Maybe Aprilia's just like, nah, screw it. We've got the bike. Let's just throw it out there in case people like the Tuono styling. So, yeah, I'm willing to be wrong here. Now, here's where we leave speculation, and we leave the RS457 specifically, and we talk about beginner bikes generally. So, the last video that went live on the channel, which is I did not plan it this way, was me talking about how the X500 and the X350 from Harley-Davidson are moving from China only to China and Southeast Asia and Australia. They're basically expanding the market for that motorcycle, which I think makes total sense. This is just more proof that the beginner bike marketplace is really something that Harley needs to not sleep on. And one of the lines that I saw a lot of in the comments section was this notion of Harley-Davidson doesn't need beginner bikes because they're trying to be a luxury brand. Okay, is Aprilia a luxury brand? Is Triumph a luxury brand? I would argue that both of those are definitely luxury brands. Ducati is a luxury brand. All of them have a gateway drug into their bigger bikes for markets that either are CC restricted, where the tax makes it hard to own bigger displacement motorcycles, or they're just too expensive for the populace there. So we talked about the Triumph 400cc singles that look just like the bigger Bonnies that are coming out to allow people a entry point into the brand. They're going to be priced very aggressively. Are they going to be full bore Triumphs? No, but I bet you they're going to feel really nice. They're going to look nice, and again, they're that gateway drug into the rest of the brand. Now we're seeing it with Aprilia. Aprilia has this really great linear progression that we used to see in Japanese companies, and we still do to an extent, where you have your beginner bike, 3, 4, 500 cc's, whatever. Then you have your middleweight, 600, 750, and then you have your 1000. You have that growth path for people who want to get into the brand. Kawasaki still has Ninja 400, Ninja 660, Ninja 1000. They have Z400, Z650, Z900. They even have the H2s. I mean, so you can go completely bonkers with Kawasaki. You can kind of do it a little bit with Yamaha if you consider the R7 the stepping stone between R3 and R1. Now that the R6 is track only. This entry point is what gets people into the brand, and it's cool to still have that path and to see it come back, specifically from a brand that wasn't really all that accessible for a lot of people around the world. You know, Aprilia, until recently, they really weren't seeing a lot of widespread adoption. They were a lot like Moto Guzzi, where the diehard fans knew about it and nobody else did. Then all of a sudden they put their foot to ass in MotoGP, and Aleix Espargaro is running at the top of the pack, or at least he was, and the RSGP's whooping ass and everybody's running around in Aprilia gear. I mean, that's awesome. That's the kind of thing that gets people inspired, and it gets them into the brand and gets the name out there. And now you're going to start seeing beginners be like Ninja 400 or RS457. You know, it's one of those things where it's going to get the name out there. It's going to get more people interested in what they're doing. It's also worth pointing out that in that press briefing, they specifically mentioned, they called out that growth in sub 500cc motorcycles is up 22% from 2021 to 2022, and they're anticipating even more growth in 2023. It was basically like 14,000 unit sales to 15 or 16,000 unit sales, and then they're anticipating 19,000 unit sales. That's a lot of bikes. You know, it's not gonna buy anybody a new island or anything, but it's still a market segment that is growing, and it's awesome to see Aprilia actually call those numbers out. Now it's from Aprilia, so those numbers may be massaged to make, you know, dealers feel good about this, but you know, we saw in the Harley Davidson year or Q2 numbers that I talked about in that video, what was the biggest growth market for them? It was Asia Pacific. It was specifically, I think it was 24% year over year. Now, admittedly, that's because they had more bikes to offer them, but I don't see how they would not see an increase in unit sales here in the States when Aprilia is anticipating an increase in unit sales and everybody else is investing into this market segment. Harley Davidson is basically the only company out there that is obstinately refusing, it seems, to acknowledge this growth segment. And it's the same thing I said at the beginning, is like, I don't see how Harley Davidson, in the interest of making money, can continue to ignore these facts. So that's my kind of Harley Davidson rant here. And I have to say this because some people are going to get mad at me for doing this. The reason why I ride Harley Davidson harder than any other company on the planet when it comes to motorcycles is because I want the best for them. I started on a Harley. I want to see them continue to grow. I don't want to see them relegate themselves to $30,000 boomer bikes. And yes, there are people in my age bracket and younger who are buying big-ass Harleys, but I am not seeing that number be where it needs to be for them to be like, yeah, this is a great call. It seems like they ought to have something to offer. Now, it is worth pointing out, I still don't know what the price for the X500, the X350, or the RS457 is going to be. You know, I heard some people complain about the prices in Australia. You know, this is a very aggressively priced and very full market segment, and if you want to participate in it, you have to play ball in terms of price, because beginners, they're very price conscious. They're very, very price conscious, and even people who are looking for, you know, a second bike to throw in the stable, something to use on the racetrack or whatever, they're not looking to spend a ton of cash on this second bike. They want to get out of the dealership for like $8,000, and you know, that's going to be hard for a lot of these manufacturers to meet. And Aprilia, because they have so much technology in this motorcycle, they can command a slightly higher price tag. But I do worry, do beginners care about all this technology? Is it a feature that's worth upcharging for, or can you have a base spec model, like maybe this is the RS457 factory edition, and they have a down market skew that comes in at, like, I don't know, $6,500, or no, I said this one was probably going to be $6,500. Comes in at $57,000, like the KTM, you know. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this growing attention. It seems like everybody is putting their eggs in the sub 500cc category right now. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's a good choice? And let me know what you think about me continuing to blast Harley Davidson, even though I'm, you know, a big fan of what they do. I really do like Harley Davidson, guys. And I'm sorry I used the Aprilia news as a pretense to bang on about them again. But and I will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.